Welcome to the Echoes of Ihsan podcast, where we dive deep into the heart of Islamic tradition. Today we're cracking open the Muwatta Imam Malik, specifically Book 54, which covers general subjects. And let me tell you, these subjects are anything but general.
It's true, this book is like a treasure trove of everyday scenarios and questions faced by Muslims during the time of the Prophet Muhammad and his companions. It's a glimpse into how they applied Islamic principles to the nitty-gritty of daily life, and surprisingly relevant even for us today.
Okay, let's unpack this. First up, asking permission to enter. It might seem like a no-brainer, but the Muwatta really stresses this, even in your own home.
You see, it's not just about avoiding awkward encounters. This seemingly simple act goes deep, reflecting the Islamic emphasis on respect, privacy, and creating a peaceful atmosphere within the family unit. It's like setting those invisible boundaries that maintain harmony even in the closest relationship.
I'm picturing a bustling household back then, multiple generations, maybe even some servants all under one roof.
Yeah.
So yeah, that respect for personal space makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. And the Muwatta gives us a powerful example. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, a companion of the Prophet, diligently asked permission from Umar ibn al-Khattab, the Caliph, 3 times before entering. Umar, known for his piety, even questioned him about this practice, ensuring it was based on authentic teachings.
Wow. So even someone as respected as the Caliph valued this principle. It shows how deeply ingrained it was in their culture. Now, speaking of cultural nuances, let's talk about sneezing.
Ah, yes. The blessings upon the sneezer. We all know the Yahamukallah response, but the Muwatta gives us a deeper understanding.
Hit me with it, because I always wondered, what happens after the third sneeze? Do you just stop?
Well, the Muwatta says you invoke blessings on someone who sneezes up to 3 times. After that, it's considered a sign of illness. So instead of saying, Yarhamukallah, you might acknowledge their condition like saying, may Allah grant you healing.
Interesting. It's like this cultural awareness of when a sneeze goes from a natural reflex to something needing attention. So it's not just about etiquette, it's also about showing concern.
Exactly. And the Muwatta goes even further, sharing how Abdullah ibn Umar, another companion, expanded the blessing to include a prayer for forgiveness for both the sneezer A and D, the one responding. It's this beautiful idea of shared well-being and seeking mercy together.
Okay, that is really lovely. Now let's tackle a topic that often generates a lot of discussion. Pictures and images in Islam. The big question. Are they forbidden?
It's not a simple yes or no answer. The Muwatta cites a hadith where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that angels don't enter houses containing pictures. This has sparked debate among scholars for centuries.
So it's not just about having a family photo on the mantelpiece. There's something deeper going on here.
Absolutely. The Muwatta gives us the story of Aisha, the Prophet's wife, who bought a cushion with images on it. When the Prophet saw it, he stopped at the door, clearly disapproving. Aisha, realizing her mistake, immediately sought forgiveness. The Prophet explained that creating such depictions could be problematic, especially on the Day of Judgment, when those artists might be challenged to bring their creations to life.
Okay, I'm starting to see the nuance here. It's not about art being bad, but more about the potential for it to distract from the worship of the one God, especially if those depictions were of living beings.
Precisely. And this gets to the heart of Islamic monotheism, the belief in the oneness of God. Anything that could lead to associating partners with God or diverting worship from him is carefully considered.
But the Muwatta does mention an exception, right? Something about markings on garments.
Yes, there's this interesting conversation between 2 companions, Abu Talha and Sal ibn Hunayf. Abu Talha removed the rug with images, even though Saul pointed out the exception for markings on clothes. Abu Talha explained that while it might technically be permissible, he preferred to avoid even those images.
So even within the boundaries of what's allowed, there's this idea of going the extra mile, being extra cautious, especially if something feels doubtful.
Exactly. It highlights the importance of seeking knowledge, understanding the nuances of Islamic teachings, and striving to live a life that's pleasing to God, even in seemingly small matters.
Got it. Now, ready for a story that might make you squirm a little? The Muwatta mentions the Prophet being offered a roasted lizard.
Ah, yes, this one always raises eyebrows. The story goes that Khalid ibn al-Walid, a renowned warrior and companion, eagerly ate the lizard while the Prophet politely declined.
Okay, so now I have to ask, was eating lizards haram, like totally forbidden? Or was it just not the Prophet's cup of tea.
The Prophet clarified it wasn't forbidden, just not something he was accustomed to. This is a great example of how cultural context plays a role in Islamic rulings. What's normal in one culture might be completely foreign in another.
And I remember reading another hadith where the Prophet specifically said he didn't eat lizards, but he also didn't forbid them. So it's about understanding the difference between what's explicitly prohibited and what's simply a matter of personal or cultural preference.
Exactly. It's about navigating those gray areas with knowledge and wisdom. And speaking of potentially gray areas, the Muwatta also delves into the topic of dogs in Islam, which can seem confusing at first.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that. Some hadiths discourage keeping dogs, even mentioning a deduction in rewards for those who do. But then others specifically allow sheepdogs and hunting dogs.
You've hit the nail on the head. The key is understanding the context and purpose behind the rulings. Back then, dogs weren't typically pets, they were working animals. Allowing dogs for specific purposes like guarding livestock or assisting in hunting highlights the practicality of Islamic teachings.
So it's not about hating dogs, it's about recognizing their roles and ensuring they're not kept solely for companionship when there might be other considerations like hygiene or safety that were especially important at the time.
Precisely. And the Muwatta mentions the concept of kirats, which are like units of spiritual reward, being deducted for keeping non-working dogs. Scholars have different interpretations. Some link it to potential hygiene concerns, while others see it as reflecting societal norms. But the underlying message is that our actions have spiritual consequences, and even seemingly small choices can impact our relationship with God.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense now. Let's switch gears from dogs to a much gentler creature, sheep. The Muwatta has some interesting things to say about them, especially in contrast to horses and camels.
Right, there's a hadith where the Prophet associates tranquility with sheep, while associating boasting and pride with those possessing horses and camels. Of course, this doesn't mean owning those animals is wrong, but it cautions against the potential for material possessions to become a source of arrogance.
It's like saying, don't let your stuff define you. And this reminds me of another hadith in the Muwatta where the Prophet predicts that during times of tribulation, sheep will be the lift possession for Muslims seeking to preserve their faith.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It speaks to the simplicity and self-sufficiency associated with shepherding, which might be valuable during difficult times. It's like a return to basics, focusing on what truly matters: faith, family, and taking care of essential needs.
And while we're on the topic of possessions, the Muwatta also talks about respecting property rights, even something as seemingly small as milking another person's cow without permission.
This seemingly simple instruction underscores a huge principle in Islam: respecting others' property and seeking permission before using what belongs to them. It's about fairness, honesty, and recognizing that even in seemingly trivial matters, our actions have an impact on others.
Okay, but here's a fun fact. Did you know that the Prophet himself, along with other prophets before him, actually herded sheep?
It's true. And it's a beautiful detail that highlights the virtues of humility and hard work exemplified by the prophets. It reminds us that true greatness lies not in material wealth or social status, but in piety, righteous conduct, and a willingness to engage in honest labor, no matter how humble it might seem.
Okay, let's jump to a completely different scenario. What happens when a mouse falls into your clarified butter? Gross, but I'm guessing this wasn't uncommon back then.
The Muwatta offers a simple solution from the Prophet: remove the mouse and discard the surrounding butter. No drama, no pronouncements, just a straightforward and hygienic approach.
Practicality at its finest. And this reminds me of another incident where Ibn Umar, a companion known for his meticulous adherence to the Sunnah, was eating when he heard the call to prayer. He didn't rush to pray immediately, but finished his meal first.
This might seem odd at first, but it highlights a really important point. Islam recognizes the importance of both physical and spiritual needs. While prayer is a pillar of Islam, there are situations where attending to a basic need, like finishing a meal, is permissible before praying. It's about finding balance and prioritizing needs appropriately without compromising our religious obligations.
So it's not about rigid rules. It's about understanding the spirit of the teachings and applying them with wisdom and compassion.
Exactly. And this flexibility and practicality are hallmarks of Islamic teachings. It shows that the religion is meant to be lived and practiced in a way that accommodates our human needs and circumstances without compromising its core principles.
All right, let's dive into a topic that can be a bit sensitive and often misunderstood: the concept of ill luck. The Muwatta mentions a hadith where the Prophet links ill luck to horses, women, and houses. which sounds a little jarring, to be honest.
You're right, it does. But to understand this, we need to put on our historical context glasses. In pre-Islamic Arabia, certain objects or beings were associated with good or bad fortune. The Prophet's statement seems to be addressing these prevalent beliefs, cautioning against attributing events to arbitrary notions of luck.
So it's more about challenging those superstitions and promoting a more rational, empowered mindset.
Exactly. And this is further illustrated by a story in the Muwatta where a woman complains to the Prophet about her family's misfortunes. Instead of validating her belief in ill luck, he advises her to leave it as blameworthy.
He's basically saying, don't blame it on bad luck. Focus on what you can control and trust that God has a plan. It's a message of agency and responsibility.
Precisely. It's about shifting from a victim mentality to one where we recognize our role in shaping our lives and responding to challenges with wisdom and resilience.
Okay, that's a powerful shift in perspective. Now, the Muwatta also talks about the significance of names in Islam, even mentioning specific names that were disliked.
Yes, choosing names with positive meanings is strongly encouraged in Islamic tradition. Names are seen as reflections of our identity and aspirations.
And there's that fascinating account of the Prophet inquiring about the names of men before allowing them to milk a camel. He asked a man named Murrah, meaning bitterness, and another named Harb, meaning war, to sit down. Only when a man named Yaish, meaning he lives, came forward did the Prophet allow him to milk the camel.
It's an interesting story that highlights the importance of names and their potential influence, even symbolically.
It's like those names carried a certain energy or connotation that the Prophet was sensitive to. And speaking of names, the Muwatta also includes a humorous anecdote about Umar ibn al-Khattab encountering a man whose name and family history were filled with fiery imagery. Umar jokingly remarked about their potential for misfortune.
It's a lighthearted story, but it underscores the significance of names and how they can even become a source of amusement and conversation.
It shows that even within the seriousness of religious teachings, there's space for humor and lightheartedness. Now, let's shift our focus to a healing practice mentioned in the Muwatta, cupping.
Cupping, a traditional method using suction cups to draw out impurities and promote healing, was practiced during the Prophet's time.
The Muwatta describes an instance where the Prophet himself was cupped and generously rewarded the cupper, showing the permissibility and potential benefits of this practice.
And there's a hadith where the Prophet states that cupping is an effective treatment for ailments if a suitable remedy exists.
But there's also a hadith forbidding payment for cupping, right?
That's right. It emphasizes the charitable nature of providing healthcare in Islam. Ideally, healthcare should be accessible to all, regardless of their ability to pay.
Wow, that's a powerful message, especially in today's world where healthcare can be so expensive. It's a reminder that compassion and service to others should be at the heart of healing. Now, before we wrap up part 1, the Muwatta also has some intriguing things to say about the East, which seems to have some negative connotations associated with it.
Yes, the Prophet is quoted as saying, "The cause of dissension is here from where the helpers of Shaitan arise," while pointing eastward.
That sounds ominous, but I'm guessing context is key here.
Absolutely. It's important to approach this statement with historical awareness. The Prophet likely referred to specific events or challenges emanating from the East at that time.
So not a blanket condemnation of the East itself.
Exactly. It's more about recognizing that certain regions or ideologies might pose challenges to the faith and require careful consideration.
The Muwatta also mentions Umar ibn al-Khattab's decision not to travel to Iraq after hearing about its association with sorcery and rebellious jinn.
Again, this should be understood within its historical context. It doesn't mean all of Iraq was like that, but rather reflects concerns about specific practices or influences present at that time.
It's a reminder that we should seek knowledge and guidance before venturing into unfamiliar territories, both physically and intellectually.
And that brings us to the end of part 1. We've covered so much ground, but there's still more to uncover.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve into even more fascinating topics from Book 54 of the Muwatta Imam Malik. We'll be discussing guidelines for traveling, the Islamic perspective on treating slaves, and those intriguing guidelines regarding snakes in homes.
It's going to be a journey filled with wisdom, historical insights, and perhaps a few more surprises along the way. We can't wait to share it with you. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Muwatta Imam Malik, Book 54, General Subjects. We're about to embark on another leg of our journey through these fascinating glimpses into the lives and practices of the early Muslims.
I'm ready. Last time, we left off talking about venturing into unfamiliar territories, and that perfectly segues into our next topic, travel. The Muwatta doesn't just offer practical travel tips, it also emphasizes the spiritual dimension of journeys.
It's true. The Muwatta mentions a specific supplication that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, would recite when mounting his camel for a journey. He would ask for a smooth path, a safe return, and protection from hardship and distress.
I love that, acknowledging that even when we're making physical journeys, our ultimate reliance is on God, and seeking His blessings should be part of the experience. It's like saying, God, I'm putting my trust in you to guide my steps.
Exactly, and it's not just about the outward journey. The Muwatta also mentions a supplication for when you dismount and rest, saying, I seek refuge with the complete words of Allah from the evil of what He created. It's this beautiful recognition that even in moments of rest, we're still seeking God's protection.
It's like a constant awareness of the divine presence woven into the fabric of daily life, even on the road. Now, the Muwatta also addresses the issue of traveling alone, especially for women. What's the guidance there?
Right, there's a hadith stating that it's not permissible for a woman who believes in Allah and the last day to travel the distance of a day and night without a mahram, a male relative she cannot marry.
So it's about ensuring safety and security, recognizing that traveling alone, especially back then, could pose certain risks for women. The presence of a mahram serves as a safeguard and protector.
Exactly. And beyond the supplications and specific rules, the Muwatta offers some really practical travel advice that's relevant even today.
Like what? Spill the ancient travel secrets.
Well, it emphasizes stopping at suitable resting places, both for yourself and your animals. Remember, this was a time of camels and horses, so taking care of their well-being was crucial.
Makes sense. Don't push yourself or your animal companions beyond their limits. What else?
The Muwatta also suggests traveling at night for faster progress, which is interesting because we often think of night travel as more dangerous. But back then, the cooler temperatures and clearer skies might have made it more efficient.
Ah, that makes sense. And it probably helped avoid the scorching desert heat during the day.
Exactly. And there's even advice about avoiding setting up camp on roads, as those were often paths for animals and even snakes.
Talk about a rude awakening. Okay, I'm definitely taking notes for my next camping trip, though I might swap the camel for a car.
And lastly, the Muwatta reminds us that travel can be tough. It can deprive you of sleep, food, and drink. It encourages travelers to return to their families as soon as their purpose is fulfilled, highlighting the importance of family ties and the comfort of home.
Ah, that's sweet. It's like saying go out and explore the world, but don't forget where you belong. Okay, switching gears a bit, let's talk about a topic that holds immense significance in Islam: the treatment of slaves. This was a reality of the time, and Muwatta offers some profound guidance.
It's a sensitive topic, but it's crucial to understand the Islamic perspective, especially since slavery was so widespread back then. The Muwatta emphasizes treating slaves with kindness and fairness, recognizing their inherent dignity as human beings.
This is so important because it goes against the prevailing norms of the time. Slavery was often brutal and exploitative, so to have these teachings advocating for humane treatment was revolutionary.
Absolutely. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, clearly stated that slaves were entitled to food and clothing in a reasonable manner and should only be tasked with work they were capable of performing.
It's incredible how Islam, revealed centuries ago, advocated for such ethical treatment of a vulnerable group. And the Muwatta goes beyond just stating principles. It gives us real-world examples of how the early caliphs put these teachings into action.
That's what makes this book so powerful. It's not just theory, it's about lived practice. The Muwatta shares how Umar ibn al-Khattab would personally visit villages and lighten the workload of any slave he found overburdened.
Wow, that's leadership. He didn't just delegate, he was actively involved in ensuring the well-being of slaves.
Exactly. And Uthman ibn Affan, another caliph, advised against forcing slave girls to earn money unless they possessed a specific skill, recognizing the potential for exploitation. He stressed providing them with good food and treating them with integrity, just as Allah treats his creation with integrity.
These are such powerful examples of how Islamic principles translate into concrete actions, protecting the vulnerable and promoting justice. And it's not just about earthly rewards. The Muwatta reminds us that treating slaves with fairness and compassion earns us double the reward from Allah.
There's a hadith stating that a slave who gives good counsel to their master and worships Allah sincerely receives double the reward.
That's amazing. It recognizes that even someone in a position of servitude can attain spiritual excellence and earn immense rewards. It underscores the Islamic belief in equality before God, where piety and righteous actions are what truly matter, not social status.
Now let's shift gears again to something a little lighter, the concept of guarding against ill luck. This section really highlights how the Muwatta addresses pre-Islamic beliefs and offers a new perspective.
Yeah, I remember the hadith where the Prophet mentions ill luck being associated with horses, women, and houses. It's a bit puzzling at first glance.
It is. But remember, this is a time when superstitious beliefs were very common. Certain objects or beings were thought to bring good or bad fortune. It seems the Prophet was addressing these beliefs, cautioning against attributing events to random chance or luck.
So it's about promoting a more rational and empowered mindset, one where we take responsibility for our actions and trust in God's plan.
Exactly. And the Muwatta illustrates this beautifully with the story of a woman who approaches the Prophet, lamenting her family's misfortunes. Instead of validating her belief in bad luck, he simply tells her to leave it as blameworthy.
It's like he's saying, don't dwell on what you perceive as bad luck. Focus on what you can control, seek solutions, and have faith that God is in control.
Precisely. It's a message of agency and resilience. It's about shifting from a victim mentality to one where we recognize our own role in shaping our lives and responding to challenges with wisdom and strength.
Okay, I love that shift in perspective. Now, the Muwatta also mentions the importance of choosing good names, even highlighting specific names that were disliked.
Yes. In Islamic tradition, choosing a name with a positive meaning is highly encouraged. Names are seen as reflections of our identity and aspirations, and there's even a belief that they can influence our character and destiny.
It's like those names hold a certain energy or power, and the Muwatta gives us a fascinating example. The Prophet inquires about the names of some men before allowing them to milk a camel. He asks the man named Murrah, meaning bitterness, to sit down. Then another named Harb, meaning war, to do the same. Only when a man named Yaish, meaning he lives, comes forward does the Prophet allow him to proceed.
It's a really interesting story that emphasizes the symbolic weight of names.
Right. It's like the Prophet was sensitive to the connotations those names carried. And while we're talking about names, how about that lighthearted anecdote about Umar ibn al-Khattab encountering a man whose name and family history were filled with fiery imagery? Umar playfully remarks about their potential for misfortune.
It's a funny story, but it subtly underscores the importance of names while reminding us not to take things too seriously.
It's like saying, yeah, names matter, but let's not get too caught up in the details. A little humor goes a long way.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even within the seriousness of religious teachings, there's room for lightheartedness and joy.
Okay, before we wrap up part 2, let's touch upon one more topic. Cupping, a traditional healing practice mentioned in the Muwatta.
Cupping, using suction cups to draw out impurities and promote healing, was practiced during the Prophet's time, and the Muwatta validates its permissibility and potential benefits.
I remember this story where the Prophet himself undergoes cupping and generously rewards the cupper, showing his approval of this method.
And there's a hadith where the Prophet states that cupping is an effective treatment for certain ailments if a suitable remedy exists.
But I also recall a hadith forbidding taking payment for cupping, right?
That's right. It highlights the charitable nature of providing healthcare in Islam, emphasizing that it should ideally be accessible to all, regardless of their ability to pay.
Wow, that's a powerful concept. Especially today when access to affordable healthcare is such a pressing issue. It's a reminder that compassion and service should be at the heart of healing.
Exactly. And on that note, we'll wrap up part 2 of our deep dive. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll delve into even more fascinating topics from the Muwatta Imam Malik, including the Prophet's insights about the East and those intriguing guidelines regarding snakes in homes. We'll uncover even more wisdom and practical guidance from these ancient texts that are surprisingly relevant even today.
Welcome back to the Echoes of Ihsan podcast. We're in the final stretch of our deep dive into the Muwatta Imam Malik, Book 54, General Subjects.
It's been quite a journey. From sneezing etiquette to the ethics of treating slaves, we've uncovered so much wisdom and practical guidance.
Remember in the last part, we were about to explore the Prophet's insights about the East and the guidelines for dealing with snakes in homes. Those felt like cliffhangers.
Indeed. Let's start with the East. The Muwatta quotes the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, pointing eastward and saying, the cause of dissension is here from where the helpers of Shaitan arise.
Okay, that does sound ominous, but we've learned that context is key, so help me understand. What was he referring to?
You're right. Jumping to conclusions would be a mistake. It's crucial to approach this statement with historical awareness. The Prophet was likely referring to specific events or challenges emanating from the East at that time.
So not a blanket condemnation of the East itself or its people.
Exactly. It's more about recognizing that certain regions or ideologies might pose challenges to the faith at a particular time and therefore require careful consideration and discernment.
That makes sense. The Muwatta also mentions Umar ibn al-Khattab's decision not to travel to Iraq after hearing about its association with sorcery and rebellious jinn. That also sounds a bit concerning. But again, I'm guessing it's important not to misinterpret it.
You're spot on. This should be understood within its historical context. It doesn't mean all of Iraq was like that, but rather reflects concerns about specific practices or influences present at that time, which might have been seen as incompatible with Islamic teachings.
It's a good reminder that we should always seek knowledge and guidance before venturing into unfamiliar territories, whether physically or intellectually. Okay, let's move on to that other cliffhanger. Snakes in homes. The Muwatta seems to have seemingly contradictory hadiths about killing them.
Yes, it's a topic that often raises questions. There's a general prohibition against killing snakes found within homes. The idea was to coexist peacefully with them unless they posed a direct threat.
So live and let live as long as everyone's respecting boundaries. But I remember there were exceptions to this rule, right?
Absolutely. The Muwatta specifies that snakes with two white stripes on their backs, as well as short, venomous snakes, could be killed. These were identified as inherently dangerous and a threat to health and safety, so eliminating the threat was permissible.
That makes sense. It's about protecting yourself and your family from harm. The Muwatta includes that fascinating account from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, explaining why snakes in homes were generally left undisturbed. He even tells a chilling story about a young man who died after killing a snake in his home.
That story adds another layer to the discussion. It emphasizes the importance of respecting the unseen world and recognizing that our actions can have unintended consequences.
It's a bit like an ancient cautionary tale. We might not fully understand the reasons behind certain traditions, but disrupting the natural order can sometimes have unforeseen and even tragic repercussions.
The Muwatta's teachings on snakes offer a glimpse into a worldview where humans are not the sole inhabitants of this earth. We're part of a larger, interconnected web of life that deserves our respect and consideration.
It's a reminder to approach the natural world with humility and awareness. Well, as we reach the end of our deep dive into Book 54, I have to say I'm amazed by the sheer breadth of topics we've covered. From sneezing etiquette to the ethics of treating slaves, from travel tips to navigating the complexities of coexisting with snakes, it's been an incredible journey.
It really has. And through it all, we've gained valuable insights into how the early Muslims applied Islamic principles to the nitty-gritty of daily life. It's a testament to the comprehensiveness of Islam as a way of life offering guidance for every situation.
The Muwatta reminds us that Islam isn't just about rituals and beliefs. It's about living with awareness, respect, and compassion. It's about constantly seeking knowledge and striving to embody those Islamic values in every aspect of our lives.
It encourages us to approach even the most mundane matters with a sense of mindfulness and connection to the divine.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through Book 54 of the Muwatta Imam Malik. We hope you've gained valuable insights and a newfound appreciation for the richness and depth of Islamic tradition.
May this deep dive inspire you to explore further, to keep asking questions, and to continue to discover the timeless wisdom contained within these sacred texts.
And who knows, maybe we'll uncover even more fascinating general subjects in future deep dives. Until next time, keep seeking knowledge and keep the echoes of Ihsan alive in your hearts and lives.